The ravens had been flying for a fortnight before the fleet was sighted. Word came first from fishermen along the eastern shore of Blackwater Bay, men who read the sea the way maesters read scrolls. They saw the sails at dusk, an uncountable number, black against the orange sky like the charred wings of 1,000 crows. By morning they had fled inland. In King's Landing, the knowledge lived in the bones of the small folk long before the lords acknowledged it. Stannis Baratheon was coming. The man who had declared Joffrey a bastard born of incest. He had 700 ships, and a red priestess who birthed shadows. He had 20,000 men and the cold, righteous fury of someone who has been wronged by the world his entire life and has finally decided to do something about it. Lord Tyrion Lannister, Hand of the King, had spent months preparing. He dismissed Yano Slint and replaced him with Bronn, his friend. Tyrion reorganized the garrison and arranged what evacuations he could. And he built his great surprise. A chain, forged in secret beneath the city, stretched across the floor of the Blackwater rush from bank to bank, waiting to be raised. Paired with 10,000 pots of wildfire, the alchemist's burning green substance that no water could quench, it was the most dangerous trap ever set in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. He had not told his sister the full scope of it. Cersei spent her days in wine and her nights in complicated grief, and the relationship between the Hand and the Queen Regent had long since curdled past the point of trust. The vanguard entered the river mouth in early afternoon. 100 of Stannis' fastest ships, lean and purposeful. The defenders watched from the walls. Tyrion stood beside Bronn as the Wildfire ship drifted out to meet them. An old trading galley, its hold packed with ceramic jars of the green substance, crewed by condemned men with nothing left to lose. Now? Bronn asked. Not yet, Tyrion answered. He waited until the enemy ships were almost upon it. Then, now. Bronn lit the arrow himself and sent it right to the Wildfire ship. The world turned green. The explosion unmade the river with a sphere of emerald light so intense that men on the walls shielded their eyes. Men half a mile away felt the heat on their faces. The sound came a heartbeat later, a crack of thunder that rolled across the bay and up into the hills and sent birds screaming from their roosts across half the Crownlands. Where the Wildfire ship had been, there was only fire. Green fire crawling across the water. Green fire leaping from ship to ship and catching in rigging and canvas and pitch-sealed wood. Men burned on the decks, with some jumping into the river, and found the river itself was burning. Then the chain came up. The great iron links rose from the riverbed, streaming water and mud, stretching from bank to bank across the mouth of the rush. The vanguard that had made it through was trapped. The fleet behind could not advance. Stannis' careful invasion had, in a single moment, been split in two. Ser Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, commanded the trapped vanguard from the Black Betha. He watched the green light with a sailor's detached horror. Not terror, exactly, but the profound recognition that the sea had turned against him. Ships he knew were burning around him. Men he had sailed with for years were burning too. He ordered his oarsmen toward the walls, because forward was the only direction left. He would not know until much later that all 4 of his sons, Dale and Allard and Mathos and Merrick, each on a different ship, were dead. On the walls, the fighting was desperate. Stannis had landed his soldiers on the north bank, where the fire hadn't reached, and they climbed with scaling ladders with the grinding determination of men who believe in their cause. The defenders poured oil and dropped stones and held, but barely. King Joffrey was on the battlements. He had his crossbow and fired it into the mass below with evident enjoyment, and his presence should have been a rallying point. Instead, it had something close to the opposite effect, because Joffrey's bravery had the quality of a boy who has not yet been hurt badly enough to feel real fear, and his soldiers could feel the difference between courage and its performance. It was Cersei who advised him. She appeared at his side, not in the locked ballroom where she was supposed to be, where the highborn ladies of the court sat drinking themselves through their terror, with Ser Island Payne standing silent in the corner, sword ready for the mercy killing that would be required if the city fell. She took Joffrey's arm and told him the battle was nearly lost and that he must come inside. The moment the king left the walls, the men on the walls could see it in each other's faces. The first rank of defenders broke. Then the second. No one expected Tyrion to lead the sortie. He was the hand of the king. He was 3.5 feet tall and had mismatched eyes and a face that made strangers look away. But the walls were breaking and there was no one else. And so he gathered Bronn and his household guards and the men still fighting, and he stood in the yard below the mud gate where the iron doors were already beginning to crack. "They say Stannis has 20,000, he told them. "They say they've broken through on the north wall. They say the city is lost." He paused. "Bugger that." The gate opened. What followed was not elegant. It was fighting in tight spaces, at a half-blocked gate, in mud and dark, with swords and axes and the sound of screaming from everywhere at once. Tyrion used the axe with the savage efficiency of a man who had spent his life compensating for his height, and they pushed back, 50 yards of ground reclaimed, enough to close the gate and seal the breach. Then someone put a sword in his face. He didn't see who it was. He saw only the blade, coming from his blind side, and he moved, and it was almost fast. The sword took him from his left eye to his cheek, a diagonal slash that opened him temple to chin and immediately went down. He saw the sky overhead, dark with smoke, still faintly green from the last of the wildfire, and thought, well, this is how it ends. It was Podrick Payne, his 13-year-old squire who tripped over his own feet and blushed when spoken to, who stood between him and whoever struck him, and held that position long enough for Bronn to arrive. Tyrion lay in the mud at the mud gate and bled while the battle raged around him. The trumpets sounded at sunset from the south. The golden lions of House Lannister on crimson. The silver fish of House Tully. The stag and roes of House Tyrell, emerald and gold. Lord Tywin Lannister rode at the head of 20,000 fresh men from the Reach, and beside him rode Ser Loras Tyrell in Renly's armor, fighting with the specific violence of someone avenging the dead. They hit Stannis' forces from the south while those forces were still focused on the walls. The impact of Tyrell cavalry on infantry that didn't know the cavalry was coming is something military historians describe in terms of force and momentum. The men who experienced it described it as a sound first, the drumming of 10,000 hooves, then a shadow eating the last daylight, and then either death or the confused aftermath of having survived. Stannis' lines bent and broke. He retreated to his ships in the methodical way that characterized everything he did, withdrawing in order, refusing to run, his household guard around him. He was the last man off the beach. Those who saw his face said it held neither despair nor rage but something worse than both. The patient fury of a man who expected the world to treat him unjustly and had been proven right again. The river burned green behind him. 3 days later they counted the cost. 8 to 12,000 of Stannis' men dead. Hundreds of ships destroyed. 3,000 defenders killed. Ser Davos found alive in the shallows, clinging to timber, half-starved, and taken prisoner. Stannis retreated to Dragonstone with 200 ships and half his original force. The lords who had declared for him began reconsidering almost immediately. Tyrion was alive. Maester Franken said the wound was deep but clean. It had taken his left nostril and much of his cheek, but missed his eye and his brain. He would live but would be changed forever. The Iron Throne waited in the dark, sharp as ever. The battle was over, but the war was not. The Blackwater Rush ran green for 3 days. Kindly subscribe, like and share this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.